It was supposed to be the happiest day of Julia's life. The church was filled with friends and family. The flowers were perfectly arranged, her dress immaculate. As she stood at the altar, her heart raced. Not from nerves, though, but from the weight of the moment. This was it. All those fairy tales she'd dreamed of as a child, the perfect white dress, the vows, the promises for forever. It was all right there within reach. Her fiancé Andrew was everything she thought she wanted in a husband. Kind, responsible, safe, stable. The kind of man who wouldn't break her heart. In every way, he was a good choice. And yet, as the music swelled and the priest began asking the questions that would bind them together forever, Julia felt a sudden jolt of fear. What if she wasn't ready? What if she was making a mistake? That's when it happened. The old wooden doors at the back of the chapel creaked open. Everyone turned. Standing in the golden light that spilled through the glass panes was a man. Tall, handsome, with hair the color of wheat and eyes like the summer sky. There was something familiar about him, something that tugged at the deepest recesses of Julia's memory. He didn't wait for anyone to usher him in or invite him forward. He just walked down the aisle, his steps echoing the silence that had fallen over the chapel. There was no anger in his face, no desperation, only a quiet intensity as he walked towards her, his gaze unwavering, locked on hers. The priest stopped. The room froze, every eye in the chapel glued to the man who dared to interrupt their ceremony. Then he spoke, but not to the priest, not to the groom, to Julia. "I know this isn't fair," he said, his voice resonating with sincerity. "And maybe I should have stayed gone, but if I don't tell you now, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I love you, I always have, and I had to know if any part of you still remembers us." Tears welled up in Julia's eyes, blurring her vision. Her bouquet trembled in her hands. She couldn't remember the last time she'd heard his voice, the last time she'd seen him. She vaguely recalled whispers, rumors about him moving away, starting a new life somewhere else, but that was 12 years ago. Surely she'd managed to move on since then? She had, or at least she thought she had. Her groom stepped closer, his voice sharp with annoyance. "Who is he?" he asked. But Julia didn't answer right away. She looked from the stranger to the priest to her parents, whose faces were etched with concern and confusion. She had so many questions, but none of them made sense. Who was this man? How did he get in? Why was he confessing his love for her in the middle of her wedding? But amidst the chaos, there was one thing she knew with an aching certainty, a familiarity that transcended years and absence. She knew that blue eyes. She knew that voice. She knew that heart. Because the boy who stood before her, the man who had come back into her life uninvited, was none other than Liam, her childhood best friend, the one she had shared secrets with, dreams and a first kiss under the old oak tree, the one she'd secretly written letters to but never sent, the one she thought she'd buried in memory. Now here he was telling her, in front of everyone, that he still loved her. The words echoed in her ears long after he'd spoken them, amplifying the turmoil in her chest. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, to seek answers. But all that came out was a whisper. "He's the one I never stopped waiting for." A gasp rippled through the congregation. People whispered, exchanging shocked glances. Julia's mother clutched her arm, her eyes wide with disbelief. Andrew's face was thunderous. The groom didn't wait for an explanation. He stormed out of the chapel, followed by his groomsmen, leaving behind a cloud of confusion and hurt. Julia's father, his face etched with worry, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We can stop this," he said gently, urging her to follow him, but she didn't move. She couldn't take her eyes off Liam, who stood quietly where he'd stopped, his gaze unwavering from her. She wanted to go to him, to ask him questions, to understand what had brought him back. But the weight of the situation held her in place. Her wedding, her life, her future, All of it hinged on the decisions she made in the next few minutes. Her mother's grip tightened. "Julia, please," she urged, her voice strained. "Let's go." But Julia shook her head, tears streaming down her face now. She couldn't just walk away from this. Not when so much was left unsaid, unresolved. She had to know the truth. She owed it to herself, to Andrew, to Liam. As if sensing her turmoil, Liam took a step forward. He opened his mouth to speak, but she raised her hand, silencing him. She needed to gather her thoughts, to sort through the whirlwind of emotions threatening to consume her. Taking a deep breath, she started to speak, her voice catching slightly, "Everyone, I'm so sorry." She trailed off, unsure of what to say, how to explain the inexplicable. Before she could continue, a loud crash echoed through the chapel. It was the sound of shattering glass, followed by a murmur that quickly grew into a buzz of conversation. Something had happened. Something big. She turned toward the commotion, her heart pounding, and saw Andrew standing by the reception area, a shattered wine glass in his hand. His face was pale, his eyes blazing with hurt and anger. "I can't believe you," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "After all these years, after everything we've planned, you choose him?" Julia's gaze flickered between Andrew and Liam, caught in the crossfire of two lives, two loves, two paths. She realized then that she was at a crossroads, a moment of truth where she had to choose between the familiar comfort of what was and the uncertain allure of what could be. Andrew continued, his voice shaking with emotion. "I thought you loved me. I thought we had something special." His words hit her like a punch to the gut. She did love him, or at least she thought she did. But there was something missing, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. Their relationship had been like climbing a mountain in fog, beautiful from a distance, but up close, shrouded in mist. Now, with the arrival of Liam, the fog had cleared, revealing the jagged rocks and hidden valleys of her true feelings. She realized she hadn't loved Andrew the way she loved Liam, the way she loved him, the way she loved the idea of them, the future they could have had. The weight of her realization pressed down on her, suffocating her with its gravity. She could feel the eyes of everyone in the room upon her, waiting, hoping for her decision. She looked at Andrew, his face etched with pain and betrayal, and she saw the life they could have built, the stability, the shared dreams. But then she looked at Liam, his eyes filled with a love that had weathered time and distance, and she saw the possibility of something more, something truer. The tension in the room was palpable, a thick, heavy presence that seemed to press against her chest, making it hard to breathe. She could feel the hopes, the expectations, the dreams resting on her shoulders, threatening to crush her with their weight. She took a shaky breath, trying to find her voice, to utter the words that had become a battle in her throat. "I'm sorry, Andrew," she whispered, her voice cracking with the effort of holding back tears. I can't." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. It was as if the entire chapel held its breath, the silence broken only by the soft sobs escaping Julia's lips. Her hands trembled, her heart aching with the weight of her choice. Andrew's shoulders slumped slightly as if defeated, and he turned away, wiping a hand over his face. His departure was quiet, almost defeated, leaving behind the echo of shattered vows and unspoken dreams. All eyes turned to Julia, waiting, wondering what she would do next. The air crackled with anticipation, with the unspoken question hanging in the balance. What happens now? In that moment, Julia knew she had a decision to make, a choice that would change the course of her life forever. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with complexities and emotions, but one thing was clear: her life would never be the same again. The story has multiple endings. Which ending do you want to see? Ending 1, she chooses Liam. Ending 2, she chooses Andrew. Ending 3, she chooses herself. Comment your pick below. Let's see which ending you guys want. Also, don't forget to follow for more updates. Bye.